The Indianapolis Regional Championships just concluded, and it is the first official Pokemon Champions event of the 2026 season. The next one will be NAIC, but this is the first regional we've had for this format. Let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to break down a lot of things. We're going to talk about how Charizard ended up winning the whole thing, despite it not being super represented in top 16, and we'll talk about the diverse metagame that we ended up seeing in Top Cut. It's actually kind of insane just how much we have left to explore of Regulation MA in the next couple of weeks before we probably get new Pokemon.
Let's just get right into it. If you guys enjoy, leave a like, subscribe, check out the Patreon, become a YouTube channel member, hype the video, all of that. And hey, you definitely want to subscribe because at 300,000 subscribers, I'll be ranking every bench in Lumio City. Let's just begin.
Okay, I do want to give a shout out to Zabandit here for making this graphic. They recreated what it would look like if they had it on stream, but for day 2 usage, we do see that the most used Pokemon was King Gambit, followed by Basculegion Male, then Garchomp, Charizard, mostly Charizard Y, probably a few Charizard X here and there, as we see when we get into the top cut. Floette Eternal, which is basically always Mega. We have Incineroar, Whimsicott, Sneasler, Sinistcha, Aerodactyl, Sylveon, and Dragonite. Now, of course, they're not showing which Mega Stones these are holding because there were some Mega Garchomp, some Mega Aerodactyl, some different forms of Mega Charizard, probably some base Dragonite as well as Megas, so that is something that we have to take into account. But what I want to talk about is mostly going to be, despite like this spread of Pokemon, is going to be the top cut specifically, because that is what's most indicative of the upper end of competitive play. Basically what we know can work in the format if you want to get major results. But before we get into that, let's just talk about the spread here. Obviously, King Gambit is extremely overrepresented in the metagame, and I've already said why a million times. It is the cleanup crew of the format, and there aren't very many steel types in this format. A lot of people will tell me, like, what do you mean there aren't a lot of physical steel types? We have Mega Lucario, we have Scizor, you know, and I get what you mean, like Mega Scizor, Mega Lucario, even base Scizor sees usage, but they're not able to do what King Gambit can do. King Gambit is not only Intimidate immune, but it's also got access to a good secondary stab. And Mega Lucario does have a good secondary stab in fighting, but King Gambit's ability to use a priority move, use its extremely high bulk to not even get like 2-shot by certain Garchomp Earthquakes, be able to Swords Dance and set up, be able to run low kick to beat other steel types. It is a Swiss Army knife. I guess it's Swiss Army sword. He's got a sword in his face. But it is one of the most flexible Pokemon in the metagame, and its ability to sit in the back and be a win condition once everything is like chipped in range of it, as well as like lead off next to physical attackers and fend off Intimidate Incineroar or whatever Intimidate users you might see. That is just something that no other Pokemon in the steel type category can really provide for a team. And like there aren't a lot of defiant Pokemon either, right? Like the only defiant Pokemon in the game besides this is Passimian, so you could use competitive, but as we've seen, like Milotic, Empoleon, and Meowstic aren't really pulling results right now. It really is that King Gambit is a one-of-one Pokemon in this very limited dex format, and that's okay. I think it's okay that King Gambit sees 60% usage. A lot of people get annoyed when a Pokemon is that high in usage, but in my opinion, I think that when a Pokemon is that high in usage, it is much easier to get a little bit more creative with your team as you know what these top 4 Pokemon are doing. These top 4 Pokemon are on like a ton of teams right now, right? And that makes it easier to build a team that beats them, as you know that the majority of the room will be this, and you can use that to your advantage while covering for other niche matchups. The reason that these Pokemon are top in usage is because they hypothetically have the best matchup spread together, right? Charizard Y has the best matchup spread in the entire metagame because it is not necessarily a solved team as we see it getting changed around every couple of days now with Cleavor, Glamour, and a bunch of other Pokemon managing to find their way onto the archetype, but it is an archetype that is good nonetheless. You know, despite people trying to counter you, you have to keep in mind that you will be beating a lot of teams in the room that aren't hard countering you. And even when you do have a team that's a little bit of a hard counter, which we'll talk about in finals, then yeah, we gotta we gotta at least analyze that, like the fact that Charizard Y manages to beat those. But yeah, I do think that there is a little bit of an issue with not necessarily over-centralization, but like a lack of options. Like the reason the metagame is over-centralized isn't because these are broken Pokemon, but it's because they are the best at what they do. And when a Pokemon is the best at what it does, that is the Pokemon that most people will gravitate towards because it's a competitive format. You don't get points for being creative, you get points for winning. And a lot of people fail to recognize that. A lot of people will see a team like you know, just the top 6 Pokemon on this archetype, which honestly is a team. You could use the top 6 Pokemon on this graphic, and it is a whole team that will work. They'll see that and they'll be like, oh, this is a team built of only the best Pokemon in the game. Obviously, my opponent has no skill. Well, no, your opponent's probably better than you, because honestly, it's a skill to recognize when your team's bad, you know? But yeah, when you lose in the team builder, you're gonna have a harder time winning in the match. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, other than that, something that I think is kind of notable, everything here makes sense. I think that Dragonite at 14.5% usage is pretty cool, because Dragonite is a Pokemon that just recently started to pick up a little bit. At the beginning of the format, Mega Dragonite was a Pokemon that was basically exclusively seen on Rain archetypes, as it would allow for Mega Dragonite to be able to land its Hurricanes more consistently. But as time has gone on, people have realized that Mega Dragonite isn't really tied to a Rain archetype. I thought so, because I was definitely someone spreading that info, because in my opinion, I'm like, okay, well, you're clicking Draco Meteor most of the time, which isn't, you know, the most accurate move, and you want to click Hurricane as your best stab move, and when you have those 2 moves as your best damage outputs, it does make it so your team is a little bit dependent on weather. However, one of the best ways to run Mega Dragonite now is as a secondary Mega to Charizard, which means that you're probably not running Rain, right? And because of that, Mega Dragonite has changed its playstyle a little bit. Now it's no longer Draco Meteor, Hurricane, whatever. Now it's like Tailwind, Flamethrower, Dragon Pulse, and a 4th move, usually Protect. And while it isn't hitting as hard as you would like it to, the fact of the matter is Mega Dragonite is a Pokemon that can match well into opposing Charizard, as opposing Charizard doesn't have much way to hit it. It's a way to almost guarantee Tailwind on you know, next to Pokemon like Sylveon and Garchomp, as it has multi-scale as its base ability, and it's like a good special attacker. Even if you're running Dragon Pulse, it doesn't matter that you're not one-shotting most Pokemon in the game, because your Dragon Pulse coming off of that, 145 base special attack is enough where you're going to be dealing pretty considerable damage to things, and with multi-scale, you'll be able to throw out multiple times. So yeah, Mega Dragonite is a pretty interesting Pokemon right now with how it's kind of evolved. It does still see play on Rain, but like, yeah, it is a bit of a stat monster, and I think that while it probably won't be the strongest Pokemon once we get more Pokemon in the game, for the current metagame, it is quite good. So yeah, Mega Dragonite I think is the most notable addition to what we saw here. Now let's get into the hard results. I don't think Lab Mouse has it yet, but I'm using Report Worm. You know, if you want to check out standings, it's actually a really useful website, standings.reportworm.com. You can go here. You can actually just click on the name of the Pokemon, the name of the person, and it'll bring up their whole team paste. And since we now have natures as a thing that you have to report in your team sheet, it makes it so it's a lot easier to kind of deduce the the way that the teams play. And it even brings up the opponents they had to play against. So yeah, obviously the winner of this tournament was Arsal Puri, which is really cool, because this is a person who has like a few results to their name, and they've been playing for a long time. If I remember correctly, like even back in like 2017, they've been playing. But I'm not sure if they've been playing a lot recently. I remember looking at the match graphic. I'm like, this guy seems familiar, but I haven't seen him in a minute. I'm not sure when the last time they played was, but they showed up and they won the whole thing, and they won it with a Choice Scarf, Garchomp, Charizard Y, Venusaur, Mega Floette, and Sinistcha team. Now, this is a team that a lot of people would look at and they would go like, oh, well, you know, this is just like the standard 6 Pokemon in the format that you tend to see. And like, yeah, that is a little bit true. Like, this is kind of like a team that you would expect to see like on ladder most of the time when you're playing the game. But it is important to recognize that like, there's a reason for that. You know, we talked about like being able to recognize when your team has a good matchup spread and what like the best team for the tournament is. And obviously Arsal was able to figure that out pretty effectively. I think that one of the more interesting things about this team is that Venusaur is a Pokemon that in recent weeks has decided to switch to running Leaf Storm as a way to deal with like opposing Aerodactyl and stuff. We have like Helping Hand Leaf Storm into Mega Aerodactyl to one-shot it. But I think that Sleep Powder is probably a little bit more applicable, even if you're rolling the dice a little bit. Sleep Powder is a move that is only 75 accuracy, which means that it can miss, but in a metagame like this where we have very few ways of dealing with status, as a matter of fact, like the Lumberry I think is dropping off in usage pretty drastically. I haven't seen like any Lumberry in a couple of weeks. but we have no safety goggles. We don't have like any, great redirection users that are immune to sleep powder that can also redirect it. And obviously, Sinistcha is a redirection user that's immune to sleep powder, but it doesn't get to redirect it because it's a grass type. Grass types get to ignore that. But basically, Venusaur is able to cover for more matchups that way, and we definitely saw that in finals. In finals, he was playing against Wolf, who was running a Sand team. Sand, I wouldn't argue, is a hard counter to Sun. I think that Sun and Sand go pretty evenly into each other, but Sand definitely has a much easier time getting into position due to the existence of, Tyranitar being able to Mega Evolve and then reset Sand and stuff. But yeah, I think that Venusaur allows for that matchup to be much more playable, as you now are able to throw out a Sleep Powder into these more terrifying Pokemon, these Tyranitars, these Excadrills, that sort of thing. And it just makes it so it's a lot easier to play into. Even if you are rolling the dice, there's more matchups where Venusaur can just come in and be a bandage to that. Obviously, Arsal played like an absolute genius. Like this, it was a perfect set if you go back and watch it. And I'm thinking for Patreon, I might go back and watch the whole set and just talk about it all the way through. But yeah, obviously, Eternal Floette is a Pokemon that we have to recognize the power of. A lot of people had been switching off of Calm Mind in recent weeks. As a matter of fact, Sinistcha, Eternal Floette was a combo that we saw basically week 1 of the format. It was like Mousehold, Sinistcha, Eternal Floette. And you would get the Calm Mind off, and from that point on, your Dazzling Gleam would hit like an absolute truck. Like you would just get one-shots on things that you really didn't think you would because Ferrior is broken. However, and let me actually pull up the team. I literally pulled up the team right here. The duo is just as effective now as it was in week 1. Sinistcha is an absolutely insane Pokemon in this format, as it allows for the bulkier Garchomps, the bulkier Eternal Floettes, and like every Pokemon on every team to just recover a little bit and survive. When you have like an automatic Citrus Berry, being able to switch in, switch out, set up a Trick Room, be speed control, be redirection, spread burns, be a win con into physical attackers. I think that like that's something that we have to recognize. I think Sinistcha is a very not underrated Pokemon in the format. As we can see, Sinistcha was sitting at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9th in usage. But like I do think it's a Pokemon that people kind of underestimate just how valuable it can be to matchups. But yeah, this team, there's not too much to cover that's like out of the ordinary. This is one of the most ordinary teams that we see. Obviously, we don't have the EVs yet, so there might be something hidden in there. But as of right now, I think that the most important thing to recognize is that, yeah, Charizard Y is the king of the format. But that doesn't mean that you can't have fun with it, because if we look at the if we look at the other things that we saw in this top cut, it's actually pretty diverse. This top 16 is one of the most diverse top 16s we've seen in a while, and we've had like online tournaments like the VR challenges and stuff, like the Grand Champions Festival, where we did see like a kind of diverse top cut, but it was mostly like just kind of centralized around Zard Y stuff. But this top cut it just goes to show that like the format isn't quite solved yet. I think that like Zard Y winning is kind of indicative of, yes, Zard Y is probably the best Mega in the format, and Zard Y Floette, it might be the best Mega duo in the format, as they cover each other pretty well. But I think that being able to recognize that like playing anti-meta still works. Like it's not like Wolf is going to lose to Arsal like 10 out of 10 times if they were to play this. It definitely comes down to like who's feeling better on the day. But yeah, let's talk about like Wolf Glick's second place team. And then we'll get into like the overall... Actually, before we get into Wolf Glick's second place team, let's talk about the overall spread of the metagame, because I want to get this out of the way. This is a very diverse top 16 that we looked at. In order of usage, with a lot of them tying, of course, we had... I believe it was 28 different Pokemon, or let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there's 36 Pokemon, 36 unique Pokemon in top 16, which is kind of cool. I mean, like, that sort of spread is pretty indicative of being able to run kind of whatever you want in this format, and that makes sense. Obviously, like, there's Pokemon that have much higher usage and representation, like Sneasler, Kingambit, and Garchomp, but yeah, also Kingambit, like Sneasler, Garchomp, and Incineroar being like the top 3 most used Pokemon, but we see like, you know, Sinistcha coming in, in like the top end of things. We see King Gambit, we see Mega Tyranitar, Mega Floette. Mega Frostlass is one of the more, I wouldn't say surprising things. I think Mega Frostlass is a Pokemon that's picked up a little bit in the past couple of weeks, while it fell off a little bit in the middle of the format. It was like great in the first few weeks, fell off in the middle, and like now it's like kind of coming back a bit. But basically, the point here is that like if we look at the lower end of usage in top 16, we do see a lot of unique picks. Obviously, on this end of things, we see like there was one Aerodactyl and one Glamora. Those aren't like super unique things, but there was a Steelix, right? One Steelix. Did I put Steelix in the right spot? Yeah, Steelix is among the ones. But even on the lower end of things, we saw a lot of really cool Pokemon. Farigiraf's obviously that you see quite a bit, but Politoed, we had a Mega Scovillain, we had an Espathra, we had a Mega Gyarados, a Mimikyu, a Komodo, a base Gyarados, a Mousehold, and a Charizard X. Now, those aren't Pokemon that you would be super surprised to see on ladder, but the fact of the matter is they're Pokemon that aren't considered like the very tippy top tiers, right? They are Pokemon that you would consider to be slightly off meta picks. I mean, like when you see a Charizard X team, you're not thinking, oh boy, another Charizard X team. You're thinking, oh wow, like I do know what Charizard X Sinistcha does, but like you know, it's kind of cool to see it. Yeah, so I do want to talk about that. Like there was a pretty diverse spread of Pokemon in the top 16, all things considered.
This channel is partnered with GamerSupps. If you want to support my work and get great tasting drinks, you can order GamerSupps through my link in the description down below or with code Moxie boosted at checkout for 10% off. GamerSupps is a caffeinated product that I recommend only to my 18+ viewers, but my link will send you to their caffeine-free product section just in case. Every product purchased through my link supports my channel financially, so I'd really appreciate the support. Now back to the video.
And yeah, so things I want to talk about. The Wolfglick team. So the Wolfglick team that got second place here consisted of a Sneasler, a Sinistcha, a Talonflame, a Mega Steelix, a Rotom Wash, and a Tyranitar. Now, this team, I believe, hit number 1 on the best of 1 ladder on Showdown like earlier this week, or last week rather, and a couple of people covered it. Eric Rios, Justin Tang. I didn't make a video about it, but I was aware that this is a team that existed, right? Because I had seen it a little bit. Other people, when you see a team do well on best of 1 ladder, other people will copy it. So while I'm pretty sure I didn't play Wolf, I definitely played other people using this team. And the team is functionally sound. I think that when you kind of remove the Steelix from the equation, you can kind of understand that this is, of course, a functional team. It is a Mega Tyranitar, a Rotom Wash, a duo that we see quite a bit on sand teams. We see Sinistcha again. Sinistcha is a Pokemon that we see on sand teams quite a bit. And while I wouldn't call Sneasler a staple of sand teams, it is a Pokemon that you see. Honestly, while the Mega Steelix is a Pokemon that is out there and strange, I would argue the strangest thing on this team is actually the Talonflame. Now, Talonflame is a Pokemon that uses Gale Wings. Gale Wings is an ability which gives you priority on your flying type moves as long as you are at full health, right? For this reason, the average Talonflame set tends to run something along the lines of, here, it tends to run something along the lines of Tailwind, Protect, dual Wing Beat or Brave Bird, depending, but usually dual Wing Beat to keep your Gale Wings intact. And then like final move, either Flare Blitz, Will-O-Wisp, or Taunt, really. Sometimes Protect will be Quick Guard. It's very dependent on the team. But it's usually considered more of a support Pokemon because it's not really known for its damage. Talonflame only has an attack stat of 81. It's not the strongest attacker in the game. That being said, it can play Bodyguard pretty good for this team. So you have to keep in mind like a Pokemon that sand teams do not like to deal with. Sand teams really hate dealing with Sneasler because Sneasler is a Pokemon which, once it gets an Unburden boost from White Herb or its Focus Ash, is able to one-shot Tyranitar, one-shot Excadrill, that sort of thing, right? It is a notoriously strong Pokemon into Sand. You basically bring it every time. And another Pokemon which is a little bit underrated and not super common, and in fact we didn't see a single one of them in Top Cut, but it's still a notoriously strong Pokemon into Sand, is Mega Venusaur. And Mega Venusaur is a frustrating Pokemon to deal with because there's a couple of ways that it can play, right? There's like the offensive Mega Venusaur that runs like Leaf Storm and stuff, but one of the more common Mega Venusaur sets is Leech Seed, Giga Drain, either Earth Power or Sludge Bomb, and then like Protect. We'll put Sludge Bomb for now, but it is an extremely physically bulky Pokemon with 80 HP and 132 defense with good recovery because of Leech Seed and stuff. It tends to pair itself with Incineroar, but it plays a little bit passively when it wants to do that sort of thing. And I think that what Talonflame does for this team, alongside the Dragonance Tyranitar, is punish passive play. Sand teams are already notoriously offensive aggressive teams, and they can play even more offensive and more aggressive when they're punishing a passive play by setting up on Pokemon. Swords Dance Talonflame, obviously with a Sharp Beak, is capable of pretty ridiculous damage. In fact, let me pull up the damage calc right now, because I think that Talonflame is a Pokemon that we kind of underestimate quite a bit. So Sharp Beak Talonflame, Wolf's was a Jolly Talonflame. We can see here, if we pull up, obviously, Venusaur, I'll pull up like bulky Venusaur, offensive. Like Brave Bird with a Sharp Beak is not a one-shot because Talonflame only has 81 defense, or 81 attack. And as a matter of fact, there are like Bold Venusaur when they run that sort of set. So Bold Venusaur is going to run like 13 defense. Bold to make sure it lives the last respects from Basket Legion. Brave Bird's doing even less than that. On a turn where you have the opportunity to, you can get up to +2 or even +1 because Incineroar exists and it will intimidate you. And a +1 or a +2 Sharp Beak Brave Bird into a Venusaur is doing 135 to 160. That's even respectable damage into Garchomp, right? Scarf Garchomp, Brave Bird at +2 is a one-shot into Scarf Garchomp, the less bulky Garchomp. And if they're running max HP, yeah, they're going to survive it most of the time, but it's still a chance to KO. Like, it is still a terrifying, fast Pokemon that is capable of a lot of damage. And I think one of the more underrated matchups is Charizard Y. Because while yes, Charizard Y is a Pokemon that can absolutely annihilate Steelix and annihilate Sinistcha, and it is scared by Rock Slide, the team really only has one move that one-shots Charizard Y, and it is Rock Slide Tyranitar, right? Typically, Sand teams will have like an Excadrill or something. And my like game theory here is that Talonflame is technically also an answer to Charizard Y, because while Charizard Y is a scary Pokemon, Talonflame resists everything that Charizard Y wants to go for. You can see a modest Weather Ball is doing 70 to 83, meaning that Talonflame is able to go for a Brave Bird. Even +1 Brave Bird is enough to one-shot a Charizard Y. And if they're bulkier, yeah, they can survive. I've said it before, but a lot of Charizard Y are not taking the +2 Brave Bird. Yeah, I think that like with this sort of team where you have like Fake Out, Swords Dance, and a Pokemon with an oppressively high speed tier at 126, it is capable of just doing that. If you see like a problem matchup for the Sand team, Talonflame kind of just deals with it, even though it's not like the Tailwind set. It doesn't need the Tailwind. This team is just super cool. Another really interesting thing is the Rotom Wash running Leftovers and Light Screen. I think this is pretty inventive. Rotom Wash typically runs a Citrus Berry in this format, but if you're running it with a Sinistcha, Leftovers does make sense because Sinistcha wants to have the Citrus Berry. Sinistcha is not able to heal itself with Hospitality, but it can heal other partner Pokemon. So being able to give the Rotom, as we saw this happen in like top 4, I believe, like Rotom surviving because Sinistcha came in and also like the Leftovers and stuff, that is really good. It's able to heal passively, and like with an HP stat as low as like Rotom's and like high defenses, like combining Sinistcha and Leftovers is going to allow for Rotom to have extremely high longevity on the field. Light Screen's incredible for Rotom. I believe Rotom does get Reflect, but it doesn't really run it. But Light Screen's cool because Sinistcha is a Pokemon that's capable of like spreading Burn, so you have like that pseudo way of like having physical damage reduction, but also it's a team with very high physical defense stats already. Obviously, Tyranitar and Steelix both have really good defenses. Steelix, though, Mega Steelix, if we change it to that form, because I just realized that it was not in Mega form. If we look at like Mega Steelix is a Pokemon with absurdly high physical defense. 75 HP, 230 defense. It doesn't get much better than that. Its 95 special defense leaves a little bit to be desired, and it doesn't get any boost from being in sand like Tyranitar. So having Rotom Wash be able to not only, burn with Will-O-Wisp, but set up Light Screen means that it is playing as a damage reducer for the Steelix, allowing for Steelix to be able to deal with things in the opposing side of the field. Now, obviously, I don't believe that Steelix is capable of, tanking a Heat Wave from Charizard Y with Light Screen up, even if Sun is active. As we can see, if we max out that, max out that HP stat, you can see that, like, oh, wait, actually, yeah, no, you can. It doesn't take that much. And I would imagine a lot of Charizard Y would imagine that it would assume that they would be able to KO with that instead of going for Weather Ball. So that is pretty cool. Yeah, no, Steelix can just eat that hit. But what I do want to point out is that Wolf is taking advantage of Steelix's ability, which is Sand Force. Well, it doesn't show it on this one, but yeah, it's Sand Force. Sand Force is really cool because, and I want to get this right because I always forget the multiplier. Sand Force believe it's a Life Orb. Sand Force is, yeah, it's a Life Orb boost. It's 1.3 times power in Sandstorm, which is really strong when you pair it with Steelix. Wait, one more time. I want to double check. I read that right. Diglett, Sand Force. Yeah, Ground, Rock, and Steel type attack specifically. So Steelix is a Pokemon that obviously has access to Heavy Slam and a 125 base power, or a 125 base attack stat. Was his Steelix Adamant? Wolf Steelix, I believe it was Adamant, or yeah, Brave. So plus attack nature. So with a Brave nature, right? Brave. And access to Heavy Slam, you can imagine that this Pokemon is dealing quite a bit of damage with Sand active. And you would be right. Because if you look at a Charizard Y, if it's out of position, if Trick Room is active, Charizard Y is actually very easy to get in range of the Sandstorm boosted Heavy Slam. When Sand is active, it's doing 38 to 45% with no investment. If this thing has high attack investment, it's doing 47 to 55. So if Charizard takes basically like, you know, a good amount of chip damage under Trick Room, this Steelix is capable of KOing it. Obviously, Tyranitar is also capable of KOing it, but this just goes to show that Steelix, even when, you know, against a Charizard Y, if Sand is active, there is like potential for Steelix to be able to deal with it, as it's not getting one shot by Heat Wave with Sand active, right? It's doing actually quite little with Light Screen and Sand active, and even with just Sand active, it's not quite one-shotting with Light Screen, so that is kind of awesome. Yeah, Arsal obviously dealt with it by being able to Sleep Powder the opposing Steelix. That was like really nice. But beyond that, I want to show Calcs and other Pokemon. Obviously, Sneasler is a very problematic Pokemon for Sand teams, and Heavy Slam is just one-shotting that, while Close Combat is basically not, it's not even hitting like it's super effective, like, because Steelix has 230 base defense. Other Pokemon, I want to talk about Sinistcha. Sinistcha is a very strong Pokemon, and it considered quite the bulky Pokemon, right? However, a Heavy Slam into a physically defensive Sinistcha is a two-shot. That is a two-shot. It is a guaranteed 2-hit KO after Sandstorm and Citrus Berry recovery. So it is a Pokemon capable of dealing quite a bit of damage. And like into the current metagame, Steelix is quite strong. Let's look at like the top Pokemon, obviously. King Gambit, walled by Steelix, high horsepower food. Basculegion, it counters Steelix if it has like Wave Crash on the board, but it gets still a very, you know, not doing like great into Steelix sometimes because it's a physical attacker. And like with this format being so physically oriented, and like the special attackers being limited to the two fairy types which Steelix resists, and the one fire type which Steelix doesn't want to play against but has plenty of partners to deal with, it does make it so Steelix is a kind of solid metagame call. Like, look at all these Pokemon. Look how many of them actually really beat Steelix. It's not too many. You can make the argument that Basculegion beats Steelix, which obviously it does if it is in position, but under Trick Room, that's not going to be awesome for it. Garchomp, I would argue, doesn't even really beat Steelix all that well, because Garchomp is, again, a physical attacker. If we look at like a Scarf offensive Garchomp, its Earthquake is doing 37 to 46% to just a max HP Steelix. We get a little bit of defense, 36 to 43 still. Heavy Slam with Sand active and max attack is going to be doing 80 to 94% to this, and even if Sand isn't active, it is a two-shot. That Heavy Slam is ridiculous. If you're under Trick Room, Steelix is actually a very dangerous Pokemon. And yeah, other Pokemon that can't really deal with Steelix, I would argue Incineroar doesn't deal with Steelix very well. Flare Blitz is not doing too much to it. Whimsicott doesn't deal with Steelix. Like, it's a good metagame call. Like, look at the top Pokemon in Phase 2. Steelix is cool, yeah. So I want to talk about that. Other notable things from this tournament I wanted to talk about were Michael Zhang's team. Michael Zhang got top 4, I believe. Double checking, I didn't read that wrong. Yeah, 3rd place, top 4. And he actually ran a hybrid sand-snow team, which I think is kind of genius. So here is the reason I believe he ran it. Basically, he ran Weather Ball on Frostlass, which Frostlass is a Pokemon which is very good into many top Pokemon if it's in position. Corviknight obviously gives it Tailwind, meaning that it can outspeed the likes of like Mega Aerodactyl and stuff. But like it's able to outspeed Garchomp, it's able to outspeed Dragonite, it's able to deal massive damage to every Pokemon in the field because Blizzard off of a Frostlass is one of the strongest spread moves in the game. You know, it's not quite Charizard Y Heat Wave, but it's still very good, right? Mega Frostlass has a very high special attack stat and a very high speed. Now, Mega Frostlass hates Charizard. It hates Charizard. It really hates Charizard. And that is problematic for it because Charizard can not only make it so Frostlass is less likely to land its Blizzard as snow goes away, but it's also able just to one-shot it back. However, Frostlass is a Pokemon that does like to play in snow, right? But even out of position with Weather Ball, it's able to deal with opposing Charizard, right? And that's because the team has Tyranitar. Tyranitar also has a Mega Stone, but Tyranitar is a Pokemon that doesn't always Mega Evolve. Out of position, if a Charizard Y comes in, you have the option to, typically a team like this would have to, if it wants to deal with Charizard Y, switch in the Tyranitar and then attack on the next turn. But this allows for the, not surprise factor because there's open team sheets, but like the option to just switch in Tyranitar and Weather Ball the Charizard. You now have a 100 base power special rock type attack. And that is notable because Charizard Y typically runs a bulky physical set, right? So if we take a Mega Frostlass, right? Oh. If we take a Mega Frostlass, offensive Veil Mega, we drop Veil really quick for Weather Ball. We see that in snow, Blizzard's doing like 37 to 44. Weather Ball single target is doing 45 to 54 to like a bulky Charizard Y. But let's say the Charizard Y comes in, sets up Sun. Well, now you're out of position. Your Blizzard could miss, and that's like not good, obviously. Your Shadow Ball's not KOing it because Charizard Y is a pretty specially defensive Pokemon. But you have a Tyranitar in the back. You switch in the Tyranitar, Sand goes up. Suddenly, Weather Ball is just a absolute like one-shot button into the Charizard Y, meaning that not only have you dealt with the Pokemon that is probably switching in for the Garchomp, right? Because your Frostlass exists to annihilate Garchomp, but you're also making it so Garchomp has no bodyguard, you know, like it's able to deal with it like that well. So yeah, this hybrid team is really cool. I mean, I thought it was really awesome. Corviknight, it's basically just a sand team, right? It's a sand team, but you throw Frostlass on. That's like a secondary Mega. Maybe even the primary Mega, if we're being real. Like it was mostly played as the primary Mega in all the matches that I saw on stream. Another thing I want to point out is Focus Sash Rockhead Arcanine next to Frostlass. This is a archetype or a duo that we saw pop off a little bit in this tournament. I played against it during the tournament, not Michael Zhang, but another person running a very similar team. Yeah, Hisuian Arcanine Frostlass is a duo that a lot of people were keen on trying out in the early metagame. Even before the game really came out, there were people testing on like these fan showdown servers with Hisuian Arcanine Frostlass because the duo is very effective. You have to think about the Pokemon that Hisuian Arcanine doesn't want to deal with. Hisuian Arcanine does not want to have to deal with opposing Garchomp, doesn't want to have to deal with opposing... really, it's just Garchomp. It doesn't want to deal with Garchomp is like the main thing. It doesn't want to deal with Sneasler. Those are like the problem Pokemon, right? Frostlass, who does that Pokemon not want to deal with? It doesn't want to deal with opposing Incineroar. It doesn't want to deal with King Gambit. It doesn't want to deal with Charizard Y. And Hisuian Arcanine is able to deal with all of them, even the King Gambit, because this team, rather than running Intimidate, actually runs Rockhead and going all in with an offensive set. Focus Sash allows you to basically deal with the opposing Pokemon without having to like always be in position. You're able to just tank like the Earthquake if you really need to get your Frostlass in. If you know, if you're out of position, you can't protect, like that's an option. But also like combining Rockhead with Head Smash allows you to keep the Focus Sash intact. It allows you to keep the Focus Sash intact with Flare Blitz, and it just makes it so this is a Pokemon that's capable of just one-shotting things. Like Arcanine has a great attack stat, 115. It's the same as Incineroar, but Incineroar doesn't run, you know, max attack on its Flare Blitzes, and the option to just go for Head Smash is really nice. The Arcanine that I played against actually dropped Extreme Speed for Rock Slide, which also makes sense. That's also quite good, but I think that for the most part, I think the Michael Zhang method is going to be more effective, as Frostlass is your spread attacker, and if you bodyguard it with the Arcanine, they're kind of just covering each other super well, and like that's something that you just have to appreciate with this sort of team. But yeah, the sand option is also the sand option. If you really find a Charizard Y team that you can't deal with, just play sand and throw your Arcanine on there, and you'll probably be fine. Beyond that, it feels like a pretty standard sand team, down to the Choice Scarf Hydreigon, which we saw Joe UX9 make good use of. So yeah, it really just feels like he took a sand team and just like Michael Zhang'd it, made it crazy. He ESM'd it, dude. We love Eternal Snowman in this house. Yeah. Next up, I want to talk about the MJ Rogers team. We love MJ Rogers in this house. MJ Rogers, if you don't know, Atrix MJ, my old channel artist. He didn't draw this. He drew my old thumbnails, but we have some of those on the channel if you go back like a year or two ago. Personal friend of mine. Sometimes we hang out. We hang out quite a bit, actually. But yeah, Mega Garchomp. Now, Mega Garchomp is cool. The reason Mega Garchomp works, and I called this out in a video a couple of days ago, is that most Garchomp are opting to go for a bulkier set these days. Usually like a citrus berry, not Swords Dance, but like citrus berry, slower, adamant, wanting to eat the hit and then just retaliate, right? That playstyle allows for it to still take advantage of like Tailwind and stuff, but on like a hybrid team with like Trick Room and stuff, it's able to outspeed Pokemon like Charizard Y, who like try to set up a Tailwind, or like faster threats like in opposing Mega Frostlass and stuff. So like you're able to kind of like hit a middling speed tier where you can do whatever you want, right? MJ obviously recognized that Mega Garchomp is able to play the Citrus Berry set. It's able to play like the Citrus Berry EV spread, but come out with more damage. You have like the bulk of a Citrus Berry spread while being able to hit like you have like a Life Orb on your Garchomp. And that is something that's easy to recognize like nowadays. There were a couple of people who were on this team. This team top 8'd the VR challenge a couple of days ago. So yeah, it's a good team. Beyond that, you have like the Focus Sash Aerodactyl with Sylveon. That offensive set is obviously going to be quite good. Typically, Sylveon run like Hyper Beam in this set, but Moonblast also makes sense to deal with Kamo a little bit easier, as Kamo can be a little bit of a problem with the team if you don't have that. But yeah, obviously, Manual Sunny Day is good next to Charizard. You're able to reset that if you face off against like a Rain team or a Sand team or something. You're able to get that back up throughout your Solar Beam, throughout your Heat Wave, your Weather Ball, anything. And honestly, beyond like the Mega Garchomp Farigiraf stuff, like this is a fairly standard team. Now, the Farigiraf thing I want to talk about. Farigiraf, I believe, I was talking to MJ between the rounds. This is an adjustment for Glamora. Basically, Glamora is a Pokemon that picked up a couple of days before the tournament, and it was an answer to Charizard. And in order to make it so Charizard can still play into Glamora, you're able to deal with it by bypassing the Focus Sash and Twin Beaming them. This is pretty cool. Here, let me show you this. Farigiraf, offensive TR setter, will give it the Twisted Spoon, boosting the power of its Psychic type attacks. See the Glamora. We'll turn off the Twisted Spoon for a second. We'll give it Tanga Berry. Psychic, obviously not one-shotting, but also if it were to one-shot, if you were able to do that, it would not bypass the Focus Sash. Twin Beam. Twin Beam, 60 to 74%, not quite doing it, but if we were to take a Twisted Spoon and boost the power of the move, suddenly 74 to 85. Wait, MJ, why were you running this? What do you mean it doesn't one-shot? Oh, that's Mega Glamora, my bad. There we go. Wait, why were you running this? It doesn't one-shot Glamora. Like, ever. Whatever, you got top 8. I'm not going to criticize you. That's my boy. But genuinely, wait, the Twisted Spoon? Oh, wait, it's for Sneasler. It's for Sneasler. Sorry, Sneasler got bulkier. So, I guess you're also just one-shotting Sneasler regardless. I guess I get it. If you crit, you beat the Glamora. I don't know. I won't question it. Twisted Spoon's cool. Helping out Hyper Voice. It's doing what it needs to do. I'm sorry, I looked at the calc and I'm like, I was so certain that would just KO it. Twisted, dang, Farigiraf, 110 special attack just really isn't that much, is it? All right. Okay. Oh, Sand was active. My bad. Okay. Let's go back to... I still had Sand active. It had a special defense boost. Okay. Okay. There we go. Twin Beam, 120 to 143. We got there. We figured it out. And even into Mega Glamora, you're doing it. Fast offensive Mega. Twin Beam, 120 to 143. Oh, wait. Yeah, 105 to 128. So, yeah, it's an answer to Glamora. There we go. Figured it out. We got there, and you don't have to run max special attack either to beat the base Glamora. You can, like, run bulk. Okay, I understand it now. Okay, we got there. What is it? To guarantee the KO, you need to be 2. Cool. All right. We got there. Next team I want to talk about. It's probably going to be the last team I talk about before we just look into broad trends. The team that got top 8, William Brown's team. This was a Spothor team. Now, I will say that like this is an archetype that I call it the making me mad on ladder archetype, because we've already known that a Spothra, Archaldon, Politoed was like a combo that got ran, right? However, this guy took it pretty far. A lot of people consider it to be a gimmick and not a team that can do super well in a tournament. And a Spothra is a Pokemon that has done well in previous VR challenges and stuff, but it was run on a very different archetype. But the way that this basically plays is Archaldon is a Pokemon that really, really misses having that Assault Vest. And it loves clicking Electroshock and Rain, and Politoed's also a good special attacker in Rain. It has decent damage output. It's a bulkier Espathra. It's a Citrus Berry Espathra, but basically Espathra has Speed Boost, and it has Calm Mind. And when you pair it with a Mega Scovillain, it's very easy to allow the Espathra to set up, as Mega Scovillain can redirect all attacks into itself, burning the opposing team. Espathra is able to get the Calm Minds off and then pass into either Archaludon or like a Mega Dragonite if you're not running Mega Scovillain in that game, or like a Politoed. Basically, Espathra is turning the Archaludon into a Mega Pokemon, because by passing a single Calm Mind into it, it gets an Assault Vest boost, it gets a Speed boost, and it gets like a Choice Specs boost. It's effectively, you get all three. You get like the holy trinity of I am a special attacker. You get a little Geomancy, you know? If you get a second one off, that is a Geomancy, and a Geomancy Archaludon is scary. It also works for Politoed, and it works for Dragonite, because they're also special attackers, but something that we saw actually come into play in the set where I believe William got knocked out was that Espathra can also just lead next to a Politoed. Espathra has the move Lumina Crash. Lumina Crash is the signature move, 80 base power, special psychic type move, lowers the target special defense stat by 2. This is great, as it means that Politoed goes from a mediocre special attacker who has like good damage output but isn't anything special, to something that's capable of one-shotting quite a bit of Pokemon. Let me show you something. Let's go with Politoed. Politoed, we'll go Scarf Offense, right? We don't even have to like give it like the Mystic Water like this one does. And we go to Garchomp. Garchomp, bulkier Garchomp even. We'll go with my custom Garchomp I was running this week, right? Citrus Berry. Actually, for this situation, we will give it the Mystic Water. The Lumina Crash is going to be doing like 25% to Garchomp at most, I would believe, if it's not like super invested. So we'll go like 77% HP on Garchomp. So that goes first, and then it lowers Garchomp's special defense stat. You dodge the Citrus Berry, and now your Muddy Water at -2 special defense is KOing the Garchomp. It's doing 83 to 98%. That means that not only are you able to combo into your Politoed, but you're able to spread damage and get KOs. Like, that is kind of nuts. This also applies with Archaludon, obviously. Archaludon's even scarier with it. But I think that this is kind of an underrated duo that we saw this week, Politoed Espathra. And I think that like Scovillain Espathra is also really good, because one of the main issues with the Espathra teams that we saw before is that they used like a Mega Floette, meaning that they didn't have like any great redirection next to them. It was typically like a Sinistcha, which is fine and all, but I think that with the way that the team plays, like Scovillain, Espathra, Archaludon is especially strong, as you're able to, in a single turn, basically, burn a physical attacker, get a special defense boost, and then the next turn pass into Archaludon, who also gets great recovery off of leftovers and that stamina boost, making it so it takes even less damage. You basically make it so Archaludon is an extremely difficult Pokemon to KO, and there aren't very many ways to get around that immediately. Yeah, it's a difficult matchup for a lot of teams. In fact, I'm not sure how I would beat it personally with my team. Obviously, Floette would be like the downfall of this sort of thing. Floette is very strong into this team archetype, but that's like the whole point of like a Sneasel. Sneasel plays as a little bit of a bodyguard, with Dire Claw being able to deal massive damage. And like if you Calm Mind with Floette, Calm Mind Floette obviously picking up a little bit was detrimental to this team doing great, but we did see the team pop off anyway. So yeah, Calm Mind Floette ended up coming back, ended up making it so this team wasn't able to kind of go the whole distance. And I would also argue that maybe Frostlass isn't a great matchup for this team, as Frostlass is also picking up in Top Cut here, and this team doesn't have a great Frostlass matchup, as Frostlass doesn't mind being burned, and Frostlass hits everything on this team for neutral, if not super effective, except for the Politoed, which you override its weather and you don't really care. But yeah. Beyond that, the tournament was pretty cool. There were some like logistical issues. Round 4 lasted for like 4 hours, and that was because we had to solve an internet issue, but it seems like they solved it in a way that it shouldn't be an issue going forward in any tournaments anymore. Something to do with like IP addresses, I don't know. But yeah, beyond that, it was a cool tournament. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. I had a great time seeing everybody. I personally didn't do very good. I finished at like 400 something. Definitely could have practiced for it. Definitely could have just locked in a better team. I went 4-4, right? 50% win rate. But yeah, anyways, that's gonna be it today. I don't need to talk about my team. It's not worth talking about. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.